you, because I did put a footnote that you had joined and taken over from Miss McTell.
Yep. I started July 8th, so I'm hitting my 4th or 5th month right about now.
Okay, great. And if you could say and spell your name.
Sure. Chris Maitre, C-H-R-I-S. Last name Maitre.
Okay, great. And that's a French name. You're from New Orleans.
I am born and raised, but I have family from the San Antonio area, actually, a Canary Islander.
Oh, wow.
My grandfather, my mom's side. So
that ushers you right into the inner circle.
Absolutely. He told me all about his stories growing up as a young man here in San Antonio, and he really imparted that history and that knowledge of how great Brackenridge Park was for him when he was growing up. So it's really kind of amazing that I get to pay it forward.
Isn't it? Yeah, it sounds like it was sort of a design made in heaven or something.
It certainly feels like destiny.
Came together. Yeah, destiny, exactly. So there are a lot of plans for Brackenridge Park. There have been many plans for Brackenridge Park. What do you see actually materializing?
Sure.
And that's a big question. Let me start off with a smaller question. How are parks important to people?
Well, I think parks are immensely important, as we saw coming out of during COVID, right? How amazing it was to be able to go back and celebrate nature. Mm-hmm. People forget, they get busy, they have lives, they have things going on. Mm-hmm. You know, parks are free. There's no admission to come into them, right? They're green, right? It's healthy. You get out, start walking, eventually jogging and running if you want, or you just want to bask in watching birds and nature and birding and, you know, go for a hike with the family. Throw your first fishing line here in Brackenridge Park. Parks are immensely helpful. A lot of wellness happens just organically being in a park, and people use a park. If there's 1 million people in a city, there's 1 million different reasons why people use parks and what they use them for. You know, like normally on a Saturday or Sunday here in Brackenridge, people are using them for car shows, they're showcasing their Jeep or their motorcycle, or they're just having a family picnic.
It's very important to get outside, isn't it, after this sort of long post-COVID hunkering down?
It is, and you know, I think it's always been, right? But sometimes people forget about how beautiful nature is. And a conservancy's job is really to preserve and protect that nature. And certainly Brackenridge Park was founded back in 2008 with that idea. And, you know, I've had the luxury to be able to work in nonprofits for about 28 years. And it's nothing better to be able to give back to something that doesn't really have a voice itself. Nobody's standing up for Brackenridge Park, and that's what the Conservancy wants to do.
Like for people who work in animal groups.
Absolutely.
For the people who don't have a voice. Are you sort of overwhelmed by well, I'm not saying, of course I know you're up for the job and you have experience. What were you in charge of again in New Orleans?
So I was the chief operating officer at New Orleans City Park. It's a large urban park, similar like Brackenridge Park, but it's a little bit bigger. It's 1,300 acres.
The official municipal park.
It is. The official New Orleans City Park was 1,300 acres, and I served as the CEO there. I was in charge of 100 employees with 300 seasonal employees, and coming to Brackenridge Park, it's an amazing park, and I'm really excited to be able to expand what the Conservancy can do for the citizens of San Antonio.
Well, you had the experience, obviously. Do you find it overwhelming to walk in the middle of a city that's growing so rapidly, and of which this park is so important because it's part of the Broadway corridor?
Yeah, I would say overwhelming, no. I mean, I think for years, parks have kind of been forgotten about, and only the last couple of 20 or 30 years, if you think back to Central Park, the world-famous Central Park, you know, people back in the 80s and 90s didn't realize its full potential, only until a conservancy can come along and help elevate a park, right? In the city, we know state resources are stretched tight. Conservancy can come in and really preserve and protect and hopefully enhance through some fundraising that the city or the county or the state may or may not be able to do with private donors. And that's really where a conservancy comes into play. So overwhelming, no. I would say Brackenridge Park is an amazing park. It's iconic. It's got great culture, great history, but it's also been loved by generations and generations of San Antonio, but it hasn't been taken care of to that level of visitation that it's getting. And it's been, I don't want to say loved to death, but it's been loved, enjoyed for years and years and years.
Yeah.
We've got to put a little bit more time and effort into bringing it up.
And the drought is sort of challenging because everything is dry and hot.
It is.
So the weather today is good for visiting because you don't have to worry about rain, but at the same time you're in charge of so many masses of acres. Is water a concern at all?
I would say it is and it isn't. We have a lot of invasive species that is choking out some of the naturally occurring species of trees and shrubs and hedges and grasses. And so I think with any conservancy you come in, you asked earlier about big ideas and big moments, those things require maintenance. You can't just let a park live, right? It has to be maintained. Like anything, you buy something, you want to maintain it, a car, an automobile, and certainly with a park, the city does a really good job, but it's got 260 other parks. Brackenridge Park Conservancy is only worried about one. We have that luxury. And so we have a real good vision to be able to add value onto what the city is already doing through various volunteer projects, getting corporations engaged and bringing their teams of 100 or 200 employees to be able to help us with trail management, river management, right? You talk about invasive species removal. We can remove some of those things. We can also help build the canopy that hasn't really been maintained, that, in order to have the tree canopy, in order to have these beautiful 100+ year cypress along the river, you've got to start worrying about the next generation, right? And we have a very old canopy. It needs maintenance, it needs pruning, but it also needs the next look at, okay, let's go plant another 50-gallon container cypress to be able to, when that one falls down, we've got something in its place.
Because of the drought.
Because of the drought. Yeah,
I just never thought about tree canopy, but I do drive along Almas Dam and notice gradually the trees are dying.
Well, you look at the urban forest that we're lucky enough to have here here in Brackenridge Park. And it's got a great deal of invasive species, and it's choking out because they grow faster than some of the natives.
The climate change is affecting. I understand climate change is affecting foliage, but also animals. They're moving.
Right, and birds are doing what birds do. They eat the berries from the invasive species, and then they fly overhead and they deposit those things unknowingly, so that invasive species propagates. And every urban park faces the same thing. It's not unique, but it requires maintenance and it requires people giving time. And we haven't had really a good, strong volunteer moment. So those are some of the big things we want to do. Some of the other big projects that we want to do, the Conservancy wants to do, is build a nature playscape, a 2-acre nature-inspired playground for kids. That there's one in the park right now. It's been closed for a couple of years. We want to expand on that one. We want to make it look like a small Brackenridge Park for kids of all ages, grandparents, parents, aunts and uncles, to bring those kids to the playground and be able to immerse themselves fully in a miniature-sized nature playscape. And it's going to serve accessible. It's going to be inclusive as well. To be able to have those folks, there's not enough accessible playgrounds in the area. So we're happy to say we've already started sending out the information. We've had a couple of community meetings. I think you referenced some of those. And we're going to continue to get public input. And we want to open this nature playscape in the summer of 2026.
That's one of your first things on your
It is.
agenda.
It's very instrumental for us. Now we have a few other things in the hopper.
Yeah.
We're still waiting on the 2017 bond project, and that's been held up to protect the river walls, to restore some of the history, the pump house, the bath house. We've got some restrooms that are closed right now. We want to reopen. All of those things about preserving what's here already, because you can't tell that story. Brackenridge, while we're celebrating its 125th year today and throughout this last year or so of 2024, it's been around far longer than that, right? The water, the blue hole, the river this is where it started, right?
The Paleo Indians.
It goes back 12,000 years ago. And I go around to parks and I visit other parks. That's what our family does on vacations. And there's not a park to my knowledge that has the amount of history and culture that we do. We need to celebrate it. We also have spaces like Sunken Garden Theater that's been closed off and not used very much.
Sort of
morbid. And then there's the Miraflores, which, while not in Brackenridge Park, it's commonly known as a Brackenridge Park amenity, and it's been closed off. And it's a love letter to Mexico. That was founded years ago, by that family, and it's been closed off and walled off and fenced off.
When you had your interviews for this job, I imagine you gave them the same passion and enthusiastic answers as you just gave me now.
I think so. I hope so. I don't think they hired me for my good looks alone.
They have to have somebody with passion who wants to get in there and rout out the mold and open the doors.
And again, I'm not afraid to visit with folks and tell them our passion and what we want to do. And my passion matched the Conservancy's passion, and I have the experience, I think, to be able to do projects fundraising, but also I know there's an interest here in San Antonio. I wouldn't want to come to San Antonio, leave, a really good opportunity, but for a better one. And this is a really amazing park. And it's shown by the amount of people that are out here today celebrating our 125th year with a big Bragg Bash.
Well, yeah, it's very exciting, and you've really come to San Antonio at its moment of great growth.
Yes, yeah, very much so.
Great place for you and your family.
My wife is joining us. She's going to be, well, that's off the record, but she'll be joining us as an Attorney General's office.
Oh, I see. Okay, it's lots of people moving here, and so
and
it's the perfect time.
my son was stationed here. We used to visit San Antonio and see this, so we're very familiar with it. My son was here with the Air Force. I know how to get. I've seen it grow just in the. I think I hadn't been here for 7 years. But my son graduated from the Air Force Academy, or not but graduated from Lackland. Did his basic training and then did his training in San Angelo. So San Antonio, much like the place I come from, is culturally rich. I wouldn't want to move to a city that didn't have great history and culture.
Well, that was a great interview.
Okay.